And we are on. And hello, Dhru Purohit here with us. Good afternoon and welcome to Digestive Reset, where we heal digestive system and hormones with more natural methods.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Awesome. So Dhru Purohit is an author, CEO, serial entrepreneur, and the host of Broken Brain collaborative podcast with Dr. Hyman. What interests me a lot is your passion for helping people, for mindfulness and sense of community. And I pay close attention to it working with my chronic digestive clients, since I discovered long ago that you can truly heal your body without healing your thoughts. Please tell me more on your background.
Yeah, so my background is my journey started like a lot of high school students who are interested in vanity. I had really bad acne and I was looking for what a solution would be to heal my acne. And every dermatologist I went to, and my father also ran a psychiatric clinic, so had doctors that worked there for him, would tell me that what I ate had nothing to do with my skin. And so I went on a journey and I ended up at a talk that this lovely woman was giving, and she said that sometimes people who have dairy, it can cause, especially if they're South Asian or Black or Asian, where they're maybe don't have a history of having dairy regularly in their diet, can cause inflammation in their gut, and that inflammation could make their acne worse, or in some cases could be one of the main kind of root causes related to it. So I went on a journey and I went on an experimentation. I took dairy and gluten and sugar out of my diet. This is in the year 2000. So this is quite a long time ago. It was my senior year of high school. And in 2.5 months, my skin completely cleared up. So that was what started my journey. And in college, I realized I had a gift for being an entrepreneur and explaining things. I didn't have an interest in going to medical school or being a healthcare practitioner, but I wanted to work with healthcare practitioners like yourself and other individuals like Dr. Hyman to help spread the word further. So I began my journey as an entrepreneur and combined my passion for business and wellness together and started building wellness companies and taking this information to more individuals throughout the planet.
That's beautiful. And it's so important. People really discount the fact that the mindset is so important in healing. So yes, that's awesome that we have people like you. So tell me what got you interested in biohacking, mindfulness, functional medicine to be hosting this absolutely amazing podcast. Like so much unbelievable information on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. It's actually a really exciting week. We just crossed 2 million downloads and we're only about 35 weeks old, so we're having a lot of fun with it.
Amazing.
What I start off with this is that even though I was very interested in the food side of it, I realized that as I started changing my diet, being a young man, I also started looking at the world differently and thinking about other categories of my life. And I started asking myself, well, I'm an entrepreneur. I want to make a difference. I want to make an impact. I'm cleaning out my body, but how can I start to clean out my mind? And what does that look like? And one of the first components that I realized is that the people that you regularly spend time with is a key component to your mindset. You know, we all know that quote, we become the average of the 5 people that we spend the most time with. Whether that's exactly statistically true, I'm sure there's some variations inside of that, but the people that are closest to us, we know through studies like the Farringham study that was done, I believe in like the late 60s, we know that the people that we're closest to, especially our friends, have a direct impact on our health and especially our mental health. So I began to look at surrounding myself with people who thought differently, who were very encouraging, who didn't rely on sarcasm, who want to see the best in you and you want to see the best in them instead of the standard sort of small talk that was out there. So really that's actually how the journey started. And I realized then that who you surround yourself with and the mindset you have is actually even more important than what you eat. What you eat is very important, but how you think is even more important. You know, my dear friend, Dr. Rangan Chatterjee from the UK, he just wrote a book called The Stress Solution. And inside of that book, he talks a lot about a conversation that him and I have had multiple times, which is that you could be eating the most perfect diet and you could be taking all the supplements, but if you have regularly stressful thoughts about your own self, if you don't feel like you're worthy enough, if you don't feel like you're good enough, that will always trump all the healthy things that you're doing. So it's not to say that one is, that you can only do this or only do that, but we can't discount the importance of mindset. And I saw that firsthand when I was building companies and leveling up my life. I saw the importance that having incredibly supportive, uplifting people surrounding you that would pick you up when you fall down and encourage you when you're going through challenging tasks. So that was happening, while at the same time too, I had a very popular blog. This is in the year, let's say 2003. I had a very popular blog when blogging was just getting started in the world of plant-based medicine, plant-based food, because that's what I knew of at the time. In fact, I was vegan at that time because I had gotten off of dairy and I thought, okay, that's the answer for me. Let me go vegan. And I did an interview with a doctor who introduced me to the world of functional medicine. And his name was Alejandro Younger, Dr. Alejandro Younger. We hit it off and he said, you're really good at explaining these things. You've built this incredible community. I'm trying to take functional medicine to more people. What if we work together to do this? So we partnered together and we created something called the Clean Program. And it launched in 2008. We launched it and it became the #1 best-selling elimination diet program. We had every celebrity in Hollywood doing it and talking about it, from Gwyneth Paltrow to Hugh Jackman to Donna Karan to anybody and everybody. The way we did it is we took the concepts of functional medicine, which we were very transparent about, and we packaged them into a beautiful program. We offered support system to individuals through free wellness coaching. And most importantly, we just made it look fun. And we created a community around it, because functional medicine is great and it works, but we have to package it and present it in a way that's exciting and fun to people. So that is how I got into the world of functional medicine. And every year we had more than 100,000 people a year doing the Clean Program. And we wrote, Dr. Alejandro Younger wrote 3 New York Times bestsellers, Clean Eats, Clean, and Clean Gut. And I was a contributing author to 2 of those books. So that's how I got into the world of functional medicine.
That's beautiful. That's fantastic. And what about hosting the podcast? What led you to that?
So then in that process, I became very close friends with Dr. Mark Hyman, and him and I always talked about doing work together. And I was a big fan of Dr. Hyman's work, and it was a big inspiration to me. And one of his books that I always appreciated was The Ultra Mind Solution, which was one of the original first big best-selling books in the world of functional medicine, but not calling it functional medicine to the consumer. The title in the front end, even though functional medicine is mentioned throughout, and all of Dr. Hyman's mentors, like Dr. Jeffrey Bland, who's a mentor to me too, were all acknowledged. The front end of the book was called Ultra Mind Solution, and the subtitle was How to Fix the Broken Brain by Healing the Body. And when I came across that book, I really understood the power of, if we want to fix the brain, we have to fix the body, because of the gut-brain connection, because of the vagus nerve, because of all these components that we now understand, but were early concepts back then. And I always thought, okay, very few percentage of the population reads books. And of the people that do, I think the statistics are only about 15% of people make it past the first chapter.
Right, exactly.
So we create other content, video, audio, other things to explain this to them. So Dr. Hyman and I set out to make a documentary, and that documentary was called Broken Brain. Last year we made it live on the web, and anybody could watch it. We had over 1 million people watch the documentary. So on the back end of that, people were so hungry for information. I said, you know what? I love interviewing people. I was the editor-in-chief of my high school newspaper. I love the idea of journalism. I'm not a medical practitioner. I'm not a healthcare practitioner, but I understand these concepts well. And I think in a way, I ask the questions that other lay people want to know about. So I decided, why not start a podcast? So we started the Broken Brain podcast, and we launched it to our community. And it's gone incredibly well. And as you know, podcasts are taking off. People are just hungry for information. And if you can make the information digestible, exciting and you can leave them with aha moments from every episode, they'll get excited. In fact, one of the things that I'm most passionate about is that if there are any practitioners listening to this interview right now, I want to encourage you to think about starting a podcast. Think about starting a video blog. Use your content. You know, one form of practice is seeing patients one-on-one. That's one form of practice. But there's a bunch of patients that cannot afford functional medicine doctors. There's a bunch of patients that will not come across your work if you are in one city and the only way for them to traditionally work with you is one-on-one. So, but the thing is that regularly writing blogs, that's another form of podcast. That's another form of practicing. Doing a podcast, that's another form of a practice. Yes, it may not be as personalized as people working with you in person, but there's so many times that I've heard from the doctors that work in my clinic. I have a clinic with Dr. Mark Hyman that we own together in Massachusetts that he's the founder of, called the Ultra Wellness Center. I hear this from my doctors. I hear this from my friends that are doctors and practitioners. There's so many times that they sat down with the patient and they wish they could have reached this person 15 years ago when somebody told them that Diet Coke was healthy. Right. Or when somebody told them that they should stay away from eggs because they have cholesterol. Or when somebody told them that, you know, if they're not celiac, they don't have to avoid wheat, right?
Oh boy, yes.
The way we do that now is through podcasting. We get the most incredible testimonials. In fact, just yesterday, because we're working on Broken Brain 2, our team went to do an interview in San Diego with 2 listeners of the podcast who, working in collaboration with their primary care health provider, were both able to lose 30 pounds. One got off her bipolar medication, again, working with her practitioner, and seeing tremendous lifestyle changes through changing her diet, getting off of her trigger foods that were causing massive inflammation inside her body. So when you can make that type of influence and change in people's lives, it's like, why would you not want to start a podcast with great information that at least gets people started on their journey and maybe gets them excited to work with a local practitioner in their area?
Absolutely. Yes, I totally love it. I agree with you 100%. I am one of the people that's going to be starting a podcast in 2019. It's one of the projects. Currently working on my second book, and that's why this interview. But right after the second book will launch, going straight into my podcast. And my husband is helping me out, who's also a pharmacist that believes in alternative ways. He practices bioenergy, which is like, will bring the entire picture, more information for my tribe.
Yeah, you were gracious enough to send us your first book, and there was an endorsement from Dr. Hyman and the opening and everything. And, you know, the thing is, there are people that are suffering out there. So being the most successful person you can be through your books, through your podcast, it's like, it's not even about you. Your success is the success of humanity. The more your material gets out there, the more that the people that are suffering, who just don't know what to do, get helped. And so we need every person listening who's passionate about health, whether it's just through Instagram or whether it's through a podcast, to regularly share and take time and put out the knowledge that they know to be true for them. And that doesn't mean that I'm not an expert, I'm not a practitioner, I don't have the background that you have, but I talk about things that have worked for me, and I highlight other people that are doing great work like yourself and Dr. Hyman.
Yeah, I love it, love it. So many of my clients are young adults in their 20s. Yes. Their parents are in the picture in their lives and make most of the decisions, sometimes even discounting the opinions of their children who's a patient. What would you recommend to those maybe teens, young adults, to those who depend on the parents financially and other ways? They feel like they can't voice out their wishes, that they want to heal in a different way, that they're more interested in a functional way, and the parents push them for it. What would you suggest to our young new generation?
Yeah, I think the key, and it's a tough thing, and when I first started to make changes in my diet, even though my family was very open-minded and healthy, they really thought I was nuts. And like, why would you stop eating dairy? We're Indian, like dairy is part of everything that we eat. And the key is education. You first and foremost, you might be excited, you might be listening to this interview, or you might be listening to a podcast from Dr. Hyman or another practitioner that's out there. And just because you're excited, you have to take your parents on the journey. You have to get educated yourself. So read the book, understand, help them understand how maybe the traditional medical interventions are just covering up the symptoms instead of getting to the root cause, and share examples with them. Explain concepts to them. Don't immediately expect anybody, let alone your parents, to just get why you're doing anything in life. And that isn't just with like your own health. That goes to your career choices. That goes to maybe who you want to marry. Maybe you want to marry one person, your parents want you to marry somebody else. And it's like, you got to take them on the journey. And especially with health, your parents care about you. They want you to be healthy, but they just don't understand. And sometimes they're driven more by fear because they don't have the education. So take them on the journey, get educated, and explain the concepts to them. Have them listen to podcasts with you. Have them watch videos with you. Have them watch things like Broken Brain with you. And then I'm going to give you the honest advice. The honest advice is if they still don't agree, then ultimately, if you are above the age of 18, you are responsible for yourself legally. And that might mean that you have to go get a job and save up money so you can pursue your own path. Luckily, the good thing is there's a lot of things that you can do. Yes, you may not be able to get the full testing that the functional medicine practitioner wants to do with you, but you can make dietary changes and other stuff, and you can save money up and just pay for it yourself. It might take 6 months, it might take a year, but what's the alternative? If you really feel that your parents aren't supporting you, and this goes with any decision in life, then you just have to go out and do it on your own. And that's just the honest truth.
Love it. Love it. Love it. I have to mention that to my oldest, who's turning 19, that he should be completely independent. And no, he's a great kid. He knows he has to make it for himself. All right. So some of my entrepreneur clients who ran themselves down to being sick, that it takes them months to get back into physical shape and restore their gut microbiome. What would you recommend to those that work long hours, often to forget self-care and important priorities? They just forget themselves.
Yeah, I think that there's a shift happening in entrepreneurship right now, where in the early days of entrepreneurship, and of course this is still there right now, it was all about sleeping less and overworking yourself. And we know now that burnout is real. For every entrepreneur that you saw that was successful, there's another entrepreneur, there's another 10, 20, 30, 40 entrepreneurs that could have been successful, but genuinely burned out or end up having a chronic disease later on in life or during their period of time of building their company. And we have to think of success in the company. We have to think of our health as being the health of our success is success in our company. Because if you're fried, that's going to affect your ability to make decisions. If you're burned out, if you have adrenal fatigue, you are not going to be able to win in the marathon. Entrepreneurship is not a sprint. It's a marathon. If you want to be part of that marathon, you got to take care of your vehicle, and that vehicle is your body. That vehicle is your body. So in my first company, I had adrenal fatigue because I didn't know about functional medicine until later on. And I didn't realize that I was just working myself into the ground. And I started to experience light sensitivity, and I started to have headaches that showed up, and I never had a history of that. And as I started reading into functional medicine, I saw, oh my gosh, I have the classic signs of adrenal fatigue. And I started doing a few protocols at the time. I had met Dr. Frank Lipman from the 1111 Wellness Center, and who wrote a book called Spent, which was later changed to Revive. Before he had written that book, I started learning about him and reading his articles on adrenal fatigue. And I said, wow, here are a few changes that he recommended that I can do to build back up my adrenals, and safe supplements that anybody could take, adaptogenic herbs, exercises that I could do, and how I could change my diet on top of the changes that I already made. And immediately I started to notice a difference inside of my body. So do not wait till things get so bad, because there are so many entrepreneurs and people that I've become friends with over the years that are in their later years, let's say, 60, 70, 80, and later than that, who feel like they sacrificed their health, and they would be willing to give the money back if they had better health. If they didn't have now, this autoimmune condition or this brain issue or this or that, or just even if you don't have a full-blown disease, just feeling like shit all the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You don't want to feel like crap. You don't want to feel like crap because that affects your enjoyment inside the business. So it's a shifting of making your health and the success of your company is directly tied to how good you feel and the role model that you set for the rest of your employees.
Absolutely. And especially if you're a healthcare practitioner, it's like you're in a really serious position and you give it to your patient. You need to be like a mirror. So you can't teach something when you don't actually do it yourself also. Mm. So being a successful serial entrepreneur, what daily rituals, mindful practices would you recommend that you might do or highly recommend?
Yeah, so there's different things that have come in at different stages of my life. And right now I'm doing this interview from New York City. I'm here for a bunch of meetings and we're shooting Broken Brain 2. And I'm spending some time with Dr. Hyman. So, when I'm on the road, there's certain things that I may not do regularly as much as when I'm in my normal routine. And there might be other things that I bring back in. As an entrepreneur who had focused on his diet for a long time, the missing piece and component for me was movement. I'm 36 years old. It wasn't until the age of 34 that I incorporated regular strength training into my weekly movement goals. I would hike regularly. I would surf every so often. And when I say every so often, that means like 6 to 8 times a year. But I would go hiking like on a weekly basis. I would meet up with friends and we would play basketball or tennis or other things. I was active in that capacity. But when I started to dig into the first documentary that we produced, Broken Brain 1, and looking at all the research and preparation of the podcast on how strength training impacts our brain and how strength training and lifting heavy things and really working out and sweating plays a role in creating BDNF, which we won't get into now, and people can look that up on the podcast. These brain-derived nootropic factors, it really creates brain fuel for the mind, and it gives you energy. I used to always think like working out took away energy for you. And then I started working out regularly, and on the days that I missed it, I had less energy. I felt more fatigued. We know through different people that have been on my podcast, and of course different practitioners like yourself that talk about these things, that when you work out regularly, you actually get better. Your insulin sensitivity gets better. You become better at absorbing because it's the muscles that actually absorb the insulin inside of our body. And when they're working out regularly, we just don't have those crashes that we normally have, even if we have a healthy diet. So that's the first thing that I'll bring in is movement. And through Dr. Mark Hyman, I learned about a really great workout that's great for the road, especially when you have a lot of meetings. It's called the 7-minute workout. And the New York Times, if you go to Google and you type in 7-minute workout New York Times, it's a quick, high-intensity workout that you can do in your hotel room without any equipment at all, and still get your blood flow pumping. And so when you realize the impact that it has on your brain health, and when you realize the impact that it has on your day, it starts to really become part of your regular ritual. Unfortunately or fortunately so, I didn't figure that out until the age of 34. So
we don't really, most of us.
But then I incorporated it in. And for me, when I'm in LA on a regular basis working out of the office, I work out with a trainer. When I'm on the road, I'll do push-ups, sit-ups, or this high-intensity workout that's there. The next component is that usually 2 days a week, I'm doing intermittent fasting. And I actually find, because now I started working out pretty regularly, I do best when I eat early in the morning. Now, I know a lot of people prefer not to eat their first meal until later on, especially if they're doing intermittent fasting. On the days that I'm not intermittent fasting, I work best, and this is where personalization comes in, if I have a big meal early in the morning. So I work out, and immediately after that workout, I have a big meal of healthy fats and healthy proteins. So that's another thing that I've incorporated that works well for me, because I'm on the phone and I'm in meetings literally every minute of the day until the day is done. I often don't even have, 3 or 4 minutes in between my next meeting. But that's just how I like it. That's how I like to work, and that's my style. So that means I need fat for fuel and protein for fuel early in the morning, and that keeps me going. And I often then will only have dinner later in the day, or I'll have a light lunch and then dinner later on. So personalizing and incorporating the right early morning meal for you. And that typically tends to be for entrepreneurs who are using a lot of mental power and brain capacity. I think that if you're not eating fat in the morning, try that as an experimentation. Get off the carbs, get off the sugar, and get off like the coffee that has sugar inside of it and is sweetened. And now, yeah, no problem with coffee, but have fat for fuel in the morning and see if you notice that making a difference. And the last thing that I'll bring in is that everybody has a different mindfulness practice. And some people prefer the app like Headspace. Some people do transcendental meditation. Regardless of where you are, I think if you even have 2 minutes, sometimes I only have 2 minutes in between meetings, I just close my eyes and I take a moment to gather myself, pause, and notice my breath. And even 2 minutes can make a vast difference because you stop the inertia of one meeting or one interaction and you come into the next scenario just present for what it needs. How many times do we have a bad morning and then we take that into the next meeting that we have later in the afternoon, right? The best part about being an entrepreneur and being an effective entrepreneur is to be fully present with whatever you're doing. Don't be sending an email and also doing social media at the same time, right? Don't be on social media and then also trying to get prepared for something else. Whatever you're doing, be present with that thing. And the best way to be present when we catch ourselves being pulled in so many different directions is to pause, notice our breath, and do some form of mindfulness or meditation practice. So those are 3 things that have made an impact for me that I think the listeners might find helpful.
Love it, love it. My hypnotherapist once taught me to going in between appointments or meetings, clients, each and every time to have a visual as if you're wearing a surgical gear and remove it after each, like you're closing your eyes. And breathing for me was the visual of removing and like cleansing and putting a new one, clean one on. I thought that was it was useful for me. Maybe others could also incorporate that.
Yeah, it's a great visual.
Yeah, women often are looking for a quick fix. How do you feel about those that just want to reach for a pill, like give me my Motrin, I have pain, leave me alone, and they don't want to deal with nutrition changes, mindset, and meditation seems scary, lifestyle changes, oh my God, I can't, I have a kid who I have to pick up. And what would you advise them, like how to maybe to make it easier, or what's most important to realize that this is a priority?
At the end of the day, the honest truth is that if whatever you're doing is working for you, keep doing it. But then you have to ask yourself the honest question, is this really working for me? Human beings and the brain is not very good at understanding the ramifications of the long term. That's why one of the most powerful practices that I've done in my own life is something called like a Tibetan death meditation. And it's where you think about your death. You think about you on your deathbed, and you think and you meditate on your death. And you would think about, what regrets would I have if I died today? Or what regrets, even if I didn't die today, if I died when I was 80 years old, but my life stayed the same as it is right now. If I didn't invest in my health. If I didn't have the energy to run after my kids and play with them. If I didn't feel like I fully went for, there's nothing wrong with wanting to have a strong and fit and lean body if that's a goal that you want to do. It doesn't mean that it's going to make you happier, but let's say if that's a goal that you have, great. If you want to go for that, what would it feel like to never have gone for that goal? And the only way to really fully feel that in your body is to imagine yourself 5, 10, 15, 30 years down the line. Think of yourself at the ages of 65, 75, 85, 95, 100, 120, whatever age it is that you think that you're going to be alive to, and think about the pain that you would experience by not putting attention and energy into any aspect of your life. Health, of course, is a big one. Same goes with finances. Same goes with relationship. Same goes with your relationship with your kids. Until you feel the pain, you're not going to change. So the honest truth is, a lot of people won't change until, as my old business partner, Dr. Alejandro Younger used to say, until they get an eviction notice. So the eviction notice might be the doctor calls you up one day and says, hey, I know you just came in for your regular checkup. You have heart disease, or you have cancer, or, I had a friend who knew that they had so much anxiety that was building up, was drinking like 6 cups of coffee a day, but just wanted to push it off while they were building their company. And then one day in the middle of an investor meeting had a panic attack. And that was their eviction notice. So we think we're doing okay. And if you're doing okay, there's nothing that I can say to convince you. If you're not doing okay, or if you're on the fence, the most important thing is to really try to feel the true pain right now that's there or that's building up. And until you feel that pain, you're not going to change. So if you're good, there's nothing I can say to you. But if you're open-minded, do whatever you can and think about your regrets, and think about the regrets you would have if you don't invest into your health. And I can tell you, from having met some of the most successful entrepreneurs in the world, from billionaires to celebrities to other individuals that are out there who typically would be seen as having a lot of outward success, every one of them that did not invest in their health, which is most often the reason that I know them, is we got put in touch because they didn't invest in their health, feels like they wish they did, and it's one of the top regrets that are in their life. So that would be my advice to anybody listening.
Totally. That's great. So what would you suggest? Would you suggest that social media and different kinds of Facebook groups for those that have chronic conditions, since they feel they're in a community and they're comfortable, but many of them that I visited just bring others kind of down when they share. All they share is how they feel. And I've noticed it's a pattern. There's not many chronic diseases groups that have uplifting quotes or posts. It's all about I'm feeling terrible, or I know how you're doing, how you're feeling. Do you avoid that? Do you? But they feel like they're in their communities, like they feel like it's their support group. How would you feel? How would you recommend to act now?
Yeah, this is a highly individual thing, but here's what I would say in general. Community is so important, right? And online community is great. I think sometimes technology gets the short end of the stick, but the truth is that some of the closest friends I have today is because I met them online. Mm-hmm. And then you go online to get offline. So it's important to also have those, especially when you're dealing with a chronic disease, to still have in real life relationships, because even a hug from a friend makes a difference. And not that you can't get that understanding online, but it's important to have that physical representation, and the conversation is always a little bit deeper. The challenge is with forum boards and online communities and Facebook groups, the tendency is you put enough people together, if it's not being moderated, and if there's not somebody to host the conversation, we tend to default to something that Reverend Michael Beckwith calls our lowest common denominator. So if there are thousands of people in the group, even if everybody is there to be supportive of each other, if we're not directing the conversation, we will ultimately default to this lowest common denominator. And the lowest common denominator is we all feel like crap, so let's talk about that because that's something that everybody can understand. Because there's people that are inside the group that have something good, and sometimes they're afraid to share it because they can't. So instead of using, these groups can be great and you have to pick and choose the information, but if you see other people posting positive stuff, more important than the group is then message that person individually and build a unique friendship with that person. I don't think you can have a friendship with a group of people. You only have individual friendships, whether this is online or in person. You can't be friends with a group. You only have a friendship with individual people. And then if you have enough friendships with enough people that are friends together, then we typically call that a group. So on forum boards and online communities, don't get lost in the voice of the community, because the ego is always looking to default to the familiar. our ego will always look at things that are familiar. So if what's familiar with us is the pain that we're going through, we will seek out that confirmation of that pain with other people. And there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that on the internet, if that's the only thing that people are talking about, it will, in a way, strengthen the ego that's attached to the identification of the disease.
Right.
If we can have a disease, there can be a disease inside of our body, and even that is a tricky word, because what is disease, right? It's just dis-ease. Just because we've been diagnosed as having, fibromyalgia or some autoimmune condition doesn't mean that we're that thing. It just means that our body is displaying these symptoms that this doctor or the medical literature is calling this name. Right. So we want to make sure at the same time too, while we can identify and feel nice that, oh, okay, I understand what disease I have. I can have this conversation with other people who understand what it's like to have Crohn's disease and how I have to run to the bathroom every 10 minutes. We want to make sure that we're not identifying as much with the disease as much as we're identifying with the new possibility of what health looks like in our life. So when we can start to identify with that, that requires an uplifting conversation and seeing the possibility and reaffirming the good in our life and not just what's wrong. And the way to do that is find a few people on these forum boards that are positive, that are uplifting, and develop individual friendships with them. Get on the phone with them, Skype with them. If they're not that far away from you, drive up and meet them together. Don't just be friends with the group.
Love it. That's such a great advice. Anything else you could suggest to my tribe and people with the chronic gut problems or hormone problems?
Yeah, I think that in my experience of being involved with programs and businesses in the functional medicine space now for over 10 years and working with, thousands of people and hearing thousands of stories through podcasts and things, even though I don't work with people one-on-one and I'm not a practitioner, everybody's journey is so unique. And even if you hear these great testimonials, even on the Broken Brain podcast of practitioners who have changed their life, and you feel like it's not happening for me yet, just know that I've heard every version of every story. I've heard it not working out for people and then it working out later on. I've heard for somebody every year for 10 years, it got 10% better. I've heard for somebody for 10 years, it didn't get better at all. And then one shift changed it. Right. I've heard people who also, just being super transparent, who are still working on getting better, and they're working with some of the top functional medicine doctors, and they feel like it's not as much of a physical thing, it's more of a mental health thing that they have to look at, and the belief systems that are there, and trauma that was there. So the one common thread that I've seen is whoever this person was, the people that don't get down on themselves for the fact that their journey is not a linear journey, that it's zigzagging and it takes time and everybody's unique. The people that have the most joy and most contentment, even if they're suffering a lot, are the ones that just have a sense of acceptance that this is the situation. Okay, there's a lesson. I don't know exactly maybe what the lesson is right now, or maybe I feel like I know part of that lesson, but most importantly, I'm just surrendering to the fact that this is a lesson and this is my reality. And most importantly, I just have to keep on going. Because regardless of what you're going through, as long as you keep on going, you will ultimately get there. And that's my advice for people that are listening is my heart goes out to you, and just keep going and know that your journey is not going to look like anybody else's journey.
Wonderful. Thank you. So last question for me. How could we find information about you and your work? I know all we have to do is really Google you, but where would you direct us to find more about you?
Yeah, I have the Broken Brain podcast. So on your favorite podcasting app, whether it's Spotify or Apple podcasting app, you can just type in Broken Brain podcast. It'll show up. There's a lot of really great interviews there. And you can also find me on Instagram, where I post a lot of different topics on especially friendship and community and mindset-related items. And that's DHRU Purohit. Dhru Purohit, just my first and last name. And you can find me on Twitter under the same handle too.
I'll write it underneath the video there for my people. Awesome, and thank you again. Thank you so much, Dhru, for being with us for this interview. I think it's going to be so helpful to hear from many. I can't thank you enough for being with us.
Thank you for inviting me. I love the work that you're up to. I love your dedication to helping people heal and go through their journey. And we're lucky to have you. If only we had 1 million more of you, then maybe we'd have a shot at healing the planet.
Yay! Sending love. Thank you.
Thank you so much.